All right, welcome everybody. Let me see if I can see the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on our speakers. I think we've got everybody here, which is exciting. So first, the face you've probably seen a few times already. I'm going to bring up Amy. Amy works with us here at LibreTexts and is also a OER librarian at multiple places, but you're going to hear her introduce herself. And I'm going to bring on Brian, who's been working with us for quite a while, authored some materials, does some really cool things with shared courses in embedding textbook stuff, embedding adapt into textbooks, I should say. And then Tim as well, just finished up his book in statistics. Well, a lot of other things, but very entry-level statistics and mathematics. And there he is. And last, I'm going to bring up Michele Leight, who you guys have seen her name a couple of times. She works with Carly, the Academic and Research Library of Illinois. So I call this the top-down and bottom-up panel because we have Timothy, who just finished his first LibreText project, Brian, who's been using textbooks and Adapt for a number of semesters at this point. So that's a brand new experienced faculty member. And then we have a librarian, and actually Amy works with multiple campuses in California as well, all the way up to Michele, who manages a statewide consortium. And we're going to talk a little about OER here. If you want to, you can feel free to pop some questions into the chat and I can address them, but I have a set of 5 questions that are already there that we're going to go through. And the first one is the one that everybody should probably know is coming, which is introductions, including your role on campus or the institution you have, and how you interacted with LibreText or Adapt thus far. So I'll be quiet, and let's start it off with Michele.
Hello, everyone. I am Michele Leight. I am the Senior Coordinator for Open Illinois at Carly, which is the Consortium of Academic and Research Libraries in Illinois. We serve over 90% of all faculty and students in the state of Illinois, and that is all the community colleges, all the public institutions, and the majority of the private institutions in the state. And we have been working with we received an Open Textbook Pilot Program grant in 2021, and shortly after that, we in getting our faculty who had awards to work with OER, we did some research and decided that LibreText was the platform that we wanted to use. And so we've been using LibreText, and I've been giving trainings in how to use LibreText since 2022.
Great. Amy?
Thank you, Justin. My name is Ame Malone, and as Justin mentioned, I am the newest member of the LibreText team in the role of Manager of Support, Documentation, and Development, but I do wear several hats. My longtime work history is as OER ZTC librarian, but for the last year and a half or so, I've moved into a supporting role as ZTC grant coordinator in 2 of the California community colleges, Ventura College and College of San Mateo. And very much like Michele, that I have been in a role of support or liaison to faculty who are using the LibreText platform to remix or author OERs. And that goes back probably to 2018-19 when I dug in for the first time with a literature instructor, and we learned how to use the platform together. So I can say I co-authored a book, but mostly I'm in the conductor doing project management and doing walkthroughs on how to use the remixer, how to go from conception to publishing. And it's very exciting to be working with the team and get to see the back end of everything. So thanks for having me here this morning.
Great. And I realized I was originally going to have Brian go there first. But Brian, did you want to jump in there now?
Sure, I'll go whenever you call me. So my name is Brian Lindfield. I'm a professor and associate director of School of Health Sciences at Kansas State University. And so my background's in nutrition, since health sciences is broad, just to provide that sort of context. And so my kind of background in OER is when I became a faculty member in 2008. I felt exploited by textbooks, as I was a student, and I didn't want to do that to my students. And so I created something that evolved into an OER. Originally, it was Google Docs is where it lived. And so I continued on for a period of time using that. I was interested in trying to see OER be scaled up more at my institutions. We made what's referred to as the Open Alternative Textbook Initiative in 2013. And that provides grants to faculty members to create, adopt, or adapt open alternative resources. And so we've been doing that since then. My connection with LibreTexts came when they actually harvested my OER. And so they reached out and notified me and said, oh, we've harvested this resource. And so I wanted to learn more about what they were doing and what was going on there. And so that's kind of led to, that sort of connection from there. I did have a piece where I was interested in trying to make my resource more interactive based off some research and survey data I'd done with my students and things. And so I'd gone through another partner, I guess, in things that create this interactive questions and things, and they were not charging students, but they're going to move towards charging students and things. And that's when I got connected. And happened to be that Adapt was being created right at that time as went there. And so I worked with them, and I've done a lot of piloting on the Adapt side. And so I do have questions, H5P questions that are embedded within my resource, and they connect to Adapt. And I worked through the LTI and now the API as well, connection to Canvas and things with them. And it's been a great sort of partnership there. And then broadly, a little bit more beyond the campus level. In 2019, I worked with the Kansas Board of Regents to create it's now Open Learning Kansas, or more of our system-wide consortium that's focused on OER.
Great, thank you. And there was a mention that your mic might be a little bit quiet, Brian. I don't know if you can move a little closer to it. But we're going to go on to Tim.
Okay, that's a good lineup we have here. I hope I can keep going with the introductions here. So my name's Timothy. You guys can hear me, yes? So this is a new little platform. I've never used AirMeet before. So I work at Orange Coast College, and our school offers what they call, zero textbook costs. But we have entire degree pathways that require ZTCs and coursework, and no coursework fees. The problem is mathematics was the only discipline that did not have one of these embedded in the program. And a lot of my faculty is not very computer savvy. And a couple of years ago, I say a couple, but it's probably 4 years ago, I showed interest. We had a ZTC coordinator come out and, give us all these different opportunities. And then there was funding from the state. And I showed interest in it. And then all of a sudden I thought about doing it. But I just didn't like a lot of the content that was out there. And what they kind of want you to do is just, here's a bunch of PDFs, share it, and so forth. And math's got a small library of stuff, especially with what we were trying to do. We were trying to create a mathematics for liberal arts course at the time. And then what happened was I just looked at it and said, I just don't see a wow factor to this. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll use it. But the goal was to get most faculty using it and on board. And so we sort of have a negative attitude towards OER for a lot of disciplines and so forth, which I think will be addressed in some more questions later and so forth. So anyways, we went back and forth. They wanted me to do it. I said, no, it's just too much work. I go, if you want this done right, here's what we need to do. It needs to be done from scratch. Okay. It has to be to where people look at it and have a wow factor. And I said, just trying to take somebody's stuff. And I was not familiar with LibreTexts at the time. So it was just there's like 8 people out there that had done something, and most of it was already kind of the same thing and shared. So I went up to our vice president of instruction, who was our dean of mathematics at one point, so we have a very good relationship. And I said, you want me to do this so bad. And I'm like, I'm the only one that's going to be able to do this. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm like, can we just, maybe not teach a class or two or something like that? And so basically, they basically took 80% of my load and paid me for it. And I did this. And it was a lot more than I expected. And what they wanted me to do was do it on Canvas. So from the entire time of September to almost December, I was on Canvas, and it was just too much. Canvas is just very clunky. I ran into an instructor who actually works at a school that is completely online. And he says, "Oh, I know what you like to do. You should just use LibreTexts." I said, "What's that?" And then here I am. And then basically I had to convert everything from Canvas to LibreText, had to get used to that platform. And I'm proud to say I started from scratch, and it's almost done. There's a chapter not in there, okay, but we don't have to do it. It's an optional section, but we are going to eventually get that done. I need a break from it because it was a lot of work. So I'm very happy to be part of LibreText, and I'm very happy with what we've done, and can't wait to share it with you guys.
And by the way, I met Tim because he came to office hours a lot to work on this book. So I got to see the book progress over time. And that brings us to our next question, which is what Tim kind of already mentioned. So I'll lead off with Tim. What is the state of OER at your institution? This should be brief for Tim because it kind of just told us.
Yeah, we haven't. So our school has especially mathematics, has a very negative vibe of online courses. Okay. And I think that's a general feeling across a lot of disciplines, is because how do we know our students are doing this? And one thing that I've learned by working with Chat GPT now and all kinds of AI, it's just amazing what is actually out there. It's pretty scary stuff, what can be done. And I'll leave you with this. I applied to be the ZTC OER coordinator for the next 2 years, and they gave me, I guess I got it a couple days ago. I knew I was going to kind of get it. The VP of instruction, Dr. Giblin, she really wanted me to show this platform to a lot of others. And I think the current ZTC OER coordinator, she was basically, I think she was more Canvas biased. Yes. Was this a full, what do you mean by a full-time position?
Do you not
This was just a 1 semester deal that I did the book for. For the OER. I'm sorry, for the OER. No, it's a 2 units workload. So I basically will go around to other departments, kind of showing them what I've done and trying to promote OER. And I'm going to learn a lot more about OER and ZTC. So one of the things that I'm going to do is, I don't think a lot of people know about LibreText. And so I'm going to be your car salesman.
Perfect.
So
And
I'm looking forward to that.
We'll chat with Brian, who I know has been doing that for a few years.
Yeah, so I'd say we have a strong foundation at Kansas State University for OER work. I will say that I think as far as the state of it currently is, I think it's a little bit more turbulent than what I've seen in the past and things. And so there's been a number of factors kind of go into that. Our administration has changed over, and so we don't have as much support or maybe knowledge of what we do as what there's been in the past. And the other sort of piece that I think is also very relevant is the whole digital accessibility push. Last year sucked up a lot of time and energy, I guess in things that where wasn't much else that people were doing from an instructional standpoint beyond, the basics of teaching their classes and things. And so I think that was something that also has impacted that as well. System-wide, quickly, I'd say that they're still growing, I guess, in things. I've transitioned off of that after starting and chairing and co-chairing to get that process started and things. There's change happening there as well. And so I'd say it's definitely a time of change that's happening. And so that's where I'd say the state's at.
Great. I think Amy, let's go to you next.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm in the California Community College system, and the ZTC grant funding that's come from the state is really keeping a lot of the momentum going. And what's interesting is both the colleges I'm currently supporting, Ventura College has had some internal funding that supports OER ZTC development. But what we found out is for the last several years, it's been very ad hoc, and people have different understandings and have used ZTC and OER interchangeably. So for this past year, we've been doing foundational work, supporting just basic understanding. This is what OER is. This is OER licensing. This is how it's different from zero cost materials that you can get from the library, or materials that instructors are creating themselves and sharing through their Canvas or Blackboard LMS systems, and really developing a culture of understanding across the campus. I know Andrea is on here with me today, Andrea Reynolds, who is our Zen lead, one of our Zen leads for the semester. So our zero textbook cost stipend to develop OER materials is called our Zen stipend, and she has been instrumental in faculty outreach and really creating community on what can be a very isolating experience in OER remixing and development. But where we're at now is we found out a lot of the ZTC programs were supported by COVID block funding, and that is all expired. So there is a new urgency at Ventura College to embrace OER because of its fiscal responsibility, that we're not spending money on publisher text or one-time access codes, that we're supporting faculty development of adoption, remixing, authoring of OER that will in perpetuity be available to students and faculty peers at no cost. So it's an exciting and pivotal time, but there's still networking. I think Timothy said that he's going to be hitting the pavement, department meetings, division meetings. These are all, hitting the pavement is, I think, the number one effective FaceTime activity that coordinators on campus can do to connect the dots and create community.
Great, Michelle. How about the statewide perspective in Illinois?
Okay, well, Carly has had, so Carly does more than just OER. We do all kinds of things for our members. But we have had an OER committee since 2017. In 2020-ish, the Open Textbook Pilot Program grant came up, and our members came to us specifically and said, hey, can you apply for this? Can you apply for this for all of us? No one institution could get it together. And so they asked us to do that. So we received our Open Textbook Pilot Program grant in 2021. That was for $2 million. We turned that around and awarded funds to 25 schools for 27 different projects. Shortly after that, or not shortly after that, a year ago, in 2024, 2 years ago, in 2024, there was an appropriation of $3 million at the state level for OER creation, and that went through the Secretary of State and the Illinois State Library. And Carly was hired to oversee the creative side of that, the actual publishing and working with faculty and librarians. And through that, I think there were something like 40 schools, institutions were awarded funds, and 127 OER texts and ancillaries are being created. We are working hard with their institutions and our Board of Higher Ed and Community College Board and some of our representatives to have funding at the state level continue. That has not been successful to this date, but we're still hopeful. The Illinois Library Association has taken it up as one of their things they're going to fight for, so that will hopefully help too. And In the meantime, Carly has readjusted our funds, and we just, the board approved $300,000 of Carly funds to be turned over, to be awarded for different projects, ranging from institutions that are starting OER programs, they don't have one yet, to institutions that have existing programs and want to do further OER creation. So it's a little all over the board, but we have some institutions that have one librarian at their library, and some with like 100, right? So there's a big range, but we offer all kinds of support, from workshops on what is OER for both librarians and faculty. We also do open pedagogy workshops, workshops on Creative Commons, accessibility and OER, instructional design. With scores, we did the 3D printing, so we also have that. So thinking of other ways to increase pedagogy. And we do project management workshops. And because of our deal with LibreTexts, we also do LibreTexts workshops. So in addition, our faculty and librarians can attend anything that LibreTexts offers, but I also do additional training. So I will replicate a lot of the things LibreTexts does that are specifically designed for our institutions. And I do sort of general ones, but I also do more designed for a particular institution, meeting with their faculty and helping them whatever I can. So we've got a lot of excitement about it. We had, for the $300,000 funding that Carly had, we had almost $600,000 worth of application. So was exciting, but sad that we couldn't fund everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I think if you're in Illinois, you should make sure to hit Michelle up here and send her a message to make sure that you know what opportunities are there, or stop by the booth. I think she'll be there during either the break or the community hour today, for sure. So those are some pretty long explanations of where we're at, which is great because you have to know where these people are at. And I want to give what the short thing is. So this next question is, share how you approach talking about OER to other faculty, staff, or librarians to get them considering OER as an option in their classroom or institutions. So in other words, what's your elevator pitch? What is your elevator speech? You run into someone and you're just going to bring up OER, or you hear them mention something that OER could be a solution to. What is your short little spiel? And then give us any funny anecdote. It doesn't have to be funny. I just like funny things. An anecdote of why you adopted that approach. So in other words, what informed that elevator pitch over time to be more effective? And we'll start off with Michelle.
I can say that sort of my approach is the fact that I was a faculty member for 17 years. So, and I am still part-time faculty in California, actually. But the idea of coming at it from actually being in a place where, or in an area where I taught the introduction to cinema, and it was a general education class, so not just cinema majors. And the cheapest history of film is $187. And I, knowing that most of my students were not majors, I thought it was criminal to ask them to pay $200 for a general education class. So thinking about it from student cost perspective, I also was a first generation college student. So knowing what it's like to go to school, having, to pay for everything on my own, and just, I think sometimes it's easy to forget that, students are more than just seats in, bodies sitting in seats in your classroom, and that they have real challenges, and some that maybe we didn't have when we were going to school, right? And so that's the way I approach it. I come from it not as a librarian saying, oh, you should do this. I come from it as a faculty member saying, hey, this was my experience, and this is how I helped my students in my classroom. And I'm also really a big proponent of open pedagogy. So the idea of getting students to participate in their own education and the creation of their classes, I think is one of the things that I really love about open pedagogy. And sort of my funny anecdote is I am always running into people and they're like, oh, what do you do? And I get to say, oh, I help faculty create open educational resources that replace traditional textbooks, giving students access and saving them money. And every time everyone's like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I wish I had that when I went to school. So that's
Oh,
what
yeah.
and
Absolutely.
time again. I love it.
Thank you. And then next we'll go to Amy, continuing our top-down effect.
All right. Thank you, Justin. I'm going to echo a lot of what Michele shared. But I think my elevator pitch changes depending on who I'm talking with. Like with administration, I'm gonna pop in a link that I've shared with Justin and Michele already this morning, but I don't know if anyone saw this report that was released yesterday of a 2-year study that was done on the impact of OER, but talking with the Vice President of Instruction, with administrative colleagues, like that there is clear research and impact that is now documented on the success of OER. I think fiscally, talking points are always great when talking to administration. Hey, we supported our faculty back in 2018 with a $3,000 remix project, and they've been teaching 5 sections of that course every semester since, and it has saved students $1.8 million. So the return on investment of that $3,000 project is paying dividends over the years, and they've since broadcast that through the department. So the entire department is now using no cost OER. So we can estimate maybe closer to $3 to $4 million in savings for one department alone for one high enrollment course. So those are some quick statistical talking points. In talking with faculty colleagues, a lot of times I think students say it better than I do, that students sharing their experience with no cost course materials or the impact of high cost course materials um, speaks more broadly to faculty on the why behind considering open educational resources. And also inviting other faculty colleagues to share their OER experience at Flex Day events or professional development events that just like you're listening to the 4 of us talk this morning, that firsthand experience is a great motivator, and also developing peer-to-peer contacts that, you know, Brian has been using LibreTexts as a development platform for years. I bet he knows tips and tricks that could support faculty A, B, and C. So I don't have a generic elevator pitch, but I will talk to anybody and everybody about OER and burden-free instructional materials. And I think I'll share similar to what Michele shared, that I have a niece and nephew who are college age and are just looking into the requirements for their upcoming first university courses. And I was like, hey, ask your counselors if there are instructors at your university using no cost OERs. And they were like, what's this? And student outreach is another huge part of what liaisons can work on too, is making sure students are aware of the resources that are out there. All right, my final anecdote, counselors are advocates everywhere. They are some of the first people who interact with students and can help direct them to these materials.
Counselors? Oh yeah. There's a lot of those resources on campus for those students just coming into things and looking for resources and ways to navigate that. Awesome. Thank you. Brian, you've been advocating for a while. What's your pitch?
Well, I was just going to piggyback on Amy. I think the high impact practice, I don't think can be undersold. I think it's major. I would recommend everybody be pushing, that forward in things, because I put a link to the list of them just to put it in context. If you're not familiar with what the list of the 13 high impact practices are, from my point of view, adopting OER is the one that's probably most approachable for common courses, I guess, and things. And so if you're talking about high impact practices, it's the one that probably could have the greatest reach, and things. And so it doesn't mean that just adapting OER is going to lead to benefit. It's got to be done in a meaningful and thoughtful way. But I do think it's a major way to have discussions, with faculty, administration, everyone about like, hey, let's really think about what we're doing. And is that what's helping support student success, given this recognition that OER is a high impact practice? And so it has adjusted, in that way, as far as the things there. The other thing that I have that's a little bit different that I can share that it might be interesting for some people at other institutions is that many years ago, we found that we were having difficulty getting administrators to be supportive of faculty doing this. And so what we did was maybe seems a little bit counterproductive from some points of views, but we instituted a fee. I guess some things is what we did. So it's called the Open Alternative Textbook Initiative fee on our campus. And so what it is it's $10 per course, and $9 goes back to the department. And so part of what the discussion now, our talking point is that we are talking to administrators about like, hey, this is a way of being able to bring some revenue into your department and things. And so now that you have their attention and you can talk to them about something where they have some sort of interest in it, especially as budgets have gotten tighter at our institution and things, that's been fairly valuable to them. And it also has been another thing that we saw initially we saw a lot of cycling, like they would do it for a little bit and then they would shift back, and so they didn't want to stay with it. And so it's led to more longevity, I guess, and things as well as what we saw. And when I talk to people more broadly about this, going back to the anecdotes for a piece, is I described it as this is an external reallocation. We talk a lot about internal reallocations with my institution, saying budgets are we got to internally reallocate. I say we're externally reallocating. We're going to take the money from external entities, publishers, et cetera, and we're going to reallocate that into the institution, and we're going to control cost. It's been the same cost, for about 10 years, or whatever it's been since we've had that. And we'd have to go to the students and ask them to raise it, I guess, and things. And so they have direct control over this, and they were very supportive of it, and have continued to be since that point in time. And so that's been a piece that's led to some different sort of discussions and things that's been beneficial for us.
Awesome. Thank you. Tim, how about you as a person who's been faculty up until now? How did you talk to your colleagues there?
Well, I'm still faculty.
Oh, I meant like up until now you were only.
Oh, yeah.
I'm learning a lot about what you might be doing soon.
Yeah, so this extra role now, or extra hat I have as the new OER ZTC coordinator, I'm going to have to know my audience. I think Anne said that. I think you got to go in to each department. I mean, this is my plan, since I'm going to be new to this for the first time, and kind of already get a general idea of how they feel about OER. One thing I've noticed at my school, and I don't know if it's just the Southern California beach life, I have several faculty, at least I know in my department, and I would assume it's throughout all departments. I call it OTJR. That stands for on the job retired. So trying to convince somebody that's got a year or two left, okay, yeah, you ain't going to do it. You ain't going to do it. They ain't going to change. They're set in their ways, right? And I think my pitch, what I think my goal would be is, could I get one faculty member doing this out of each department? At least one. And I think I'd have to go into LibreText and find out and ask Justin, hey, Justin, let's take psychology. What's the go-to? What's the one where if I introduce this text from LibreText, right, that's going to make that whole department looking at me going, wow, I need to pique their interest so they go and make a click, right? They have to click that thing. And if I don't have it and I'm finding somebody that just shared somebody's that shared somebody's that shared somebody's, right? I don't think that that's going to do it. So that would be my approach. I would also probably go in. I don't know if I'd want to go in full, like, you need to do this or everything. I think you need to give it as an option and just try to pitch it that way. And what you do is you're planting the seed, and then let somebody there start saying, oh, this is great, and let it spread within. And I think that's how I'm going to attack it. I think it was it Michelle that said this, or was it Anne? You said the $200 you didn't feel good about, charging for the students, right? I just thought of something as you said that. And one of my biggest problems is the students don't buy the book because it's too expensive. And we've done everything in our power to try to keep the costs down. So I've had students where, and I think I would do this too, because I tend to be cheap. I think I would just, if I have a phone, I've got a 1 terabyte phone here, I'll just take pictures of the damn thing, right? I'm not going to pay $200. I don't think the copyright police are going to come after me. And I've seen people do this. I have so many students that just sit there and I'm writing out notes in class and they're just, right? And so I think telling other faculty that, don't your students do that? And they're going to go, yeah, they're going to do that, and so forth. And I'm like, well, they don't want to pay for the book. And I think just trying to sell it that way and give them ideas. One of my biggest challenges for math is, if you're familiar with mathematics textbooks, Pearson is the #1 product. And they have something built into it called My Math Lab or My Stats Lab or whatever they call it now. Something, I think it's just My Lab in general. And I get a lot of faculty that like, well, I do you grade? I don't want to grade homework. And so they program everything into Math Lab, and I can't stand it because I've tried it with my son when he was taking a pre-calc course. And I couldn't type it incorrectly because it was only accepting one way. For example, 2x plus 4 and 2 parentheses x plus 2, that's the same thing. And unless that is done perfectly, I struggle with it. And so we have a lot of teachers that just don't want to grade. And so they would prefer the Pearson product because it's already done for them. Now, I do know that LibreTexts offers Adapt. I have, like, I'll be honest, I have no idea what that is. I've just been so focused on just doing the basics. And then eventually I would like to learn and have sort of more of an interactive feel. And so I will be adding to this book eventually and so forth. And so I took some notes here because I definitely wanted to say some things. But I think telling the departments, give the students at least one option. It's not for every single course. And I think that's very important what Brian said. It's not an umbrella, one size fits all. And I think if you kind of go in there with that attitude, I think you'll at least get some people listening to you, because a lot of people are closed-minded, if you didn't know that already. So, but I can't wait. Can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you. And then this one might be almost already answered by a number of people. What's my next Q&A? Here it is. What lessons have you learned that have informed your strategies, policies, or models surrounding advocating for OER? And what advice? I think we kind of might have already covered that first question quite well by everybody. So maybe we'll just skip to the second one for time reasons and say, what advice would you give yourself from 5 years ago? So if you were to meet yourself on campus 5 years ago, what would you give that advice to yourself? And we're going to start with Tim and go back from bottom up.
What advice? Where was LibreTexts? That's what I would have asked, probably. But like our go-to was MathStacks, open stacks, right? I think that's OpenStax is across the board, right? Is that, or is it right? It's so that was like, to me, that was the best thing that I saw out there. But as you know, if like your best student had a 75% C in the class, you can call them your best student technically, right? So I didn't think OER or the math stacks, okay, OpenStax was actually the greatest option. It was okay. It was, as students would say, meh, right? MEH. So what advice would I give? I think I would have told myself, look at the future, okay? And just as when you get hired for a job, right? You have to say the right things, especially in education, you know. And you were supposed to say something along the lines like, I'm here and I'm going to adapt to the needs and the changes of the student. And I think if I would tell myself that probably every year, that you are going to have to change, okay? The stuff we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, it's different. It's going to be constantly changing, just like technology and so forth. So I'm not sure if I answered that correctly, but I would say be more open-minded about change.
Good. How about Brian? What advice would you give yourself from 5 years ago?
Well, I think Tim gave good advice there. I guess the be ready, be open-minded to change. I'd say that's one of the things. The other one I would probably say quickly, to stay with the prompt Justin gave us, is to stay the course. And by that, I mean, 5 years ago, the group of partners I work with within the institution are different. All the administrators are different. The only thing that's the same is me. You know what I mean? I guess in things within what we're doing. And so when we started this work, I was definitely the young person, I guess in things. And so that's definitely transitioned, over time as far as how this has worked out. And there's been kind of constant change of people involved and that sort of thing. And so to just kind of going back, not only not saying stay the course, be entrenched, but be intentional around facing what challenges and barriers kind of come up and figure out ways forward, I guess, and things through what's a continuing evolving situation.
Great. Amy?
Thanks, Justin. This is a great question. I'm trying to put myself in place. Where was I 5 years ago? And I think two things come to mind. One, similar to what Brian was just saying, that this is not a sprint. This is an endurance race, that staying the course and really understanding that critical mass is a slow process, and part of that is building in succession planning. And I don't think I realized how integral that was, that people change roles, get new assignments, cycle out to different institutions, and building a program that is sustainable across classifications, that faculty, administration, classified professionals all need to be involved in the development, and that it has to go beyond a person, that, Amy as ZTC coordinator, OER librarian, I can do so much, but eventually it needs to be associated with a role, so that whoever moves into the OER librarian, ZTC coordinator, can pick up and run with it instead of reinventing it each time there's a change in personnel.
That's very good
Yeah.
advice. You can be a champion on campus, but there does need to be an institutional role of some sort to support that long-term good. Michelle, I think that you're up. Let me put the question back on screen real quick.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like 5 years ago, I was a professor and not working doing this. I think if I wish that I had someone who would have said, "Oh, there's not a good text for what you're doing. What can you do to help create it?" Like suggesting. I wish that there had been someone to suggest OER as a possibility when I was a faculty member. That I think that would have been a really great experience then. And I think that part of that would also help me to talk about just sort of how you balance workload, right? And that it's not scary. It doesn't have to be scary and undoable, right? That you can work on it in sections and work with your students. And so my advice to myself then would be, you have this idea, just do it. Don't wait. I wish I hadn't waited, but I could still do it.
That's good advice for anyone in the room that's thinking, could I even do that? I think that's great. And I apologize, someone started mowing my lawn outside, or mowing a lawn, I don't know. So hopefully you can't hear it. The last question that we have is similar to that one, but do you have any advice for people that are watching right now if they're interested in getting involved in advocating for or adopting OER, or voicing support for policy changes at their institution? So if you have someone here who's like, man, I wish we had something like that on campus, what would have helped your institution or your campus to get on board with this train faster? And what kind of avenues have been very fruitful for you there? So again, we're going to reverse and go the other way and start off with Michele.
My advice would be just to talk to people. That's the best way to get involved, to start advocating, is just talk to people. Find out if who on your campus is doing this. Is it being done through the library? Is it a particular department? And that's the thing is not all institutions are advertising that they're doing OER. And we've had plenty of instances where, librarians just happen to find out that someone on their campus is doing OER, and they're like, oh, this is a great idea, right? And the thing is I think because people don't necessarily talk to people in other departments about things like this, or talk to their library staff about this. And the library is a great support for OER creation. So my advice is just start talking. There are plenty of places where, advocacy can just be talking to someone else in your department. It could be talking to the provost in an elevator, it could be anywhere. And it's those small little conversations that I think stick with people more than even just having a big presentation. So, yeah.
Great. Amy?
I love that advice, Michele. And I think to follow up on that, like the best time to start is now. And the best way to do it is whatever avenue you see ahead of you. Some of the best partners are with academic senates, with curriculum committees. Those are places where instructional materials are talked about. And it doesn't have to be big. Just bringing it up in a public comment. Hey, how are other faculty feeling about this? Could this be a discussion item on a Senate agenda? Or maybe you've bumped into a colleague that is also interested in OER. Do you want to propose? Sometimes there's stipends locally for creating communities of practice that become the seed of the movement on your campus. And then also reach out to peers in your state, in your consortium, in your district. There are probably other people working on similar things, and to do this in partnership rather than isolation helps the work progress more quickly. So take advantage of the resources that are out there. And I think, Justin, I can do a plug here for our Connections Forum that, we could start in general, like, hey, how do I get started with a campus initiative or a local initiative? And we're out here. We're all here doing the work together, and here in the spirit of open to share our lessons learned.
Absolutely. Great. And with that, we'll go on to Brian. How about you? How about I'll bring the question back up in case needed. Any advice for those wanting to get involved in advocating or adopting OER or voicing support for policy at their institutions?
Yeah, so I guess I can share at least what my experience was, is that I going back to Amy's answer, I did join faculty senate and I got involved in a committee. I guess some things that where this was relevant, and so was it kind of able to bubble up forward from there. And through that work, I ended up being faculty senate president, which was not exactly what my plan was as I went in, but that's something that was recognized. They thought that I could do that, and I had that potential in order to be able to do so. And so from that sort of lens, I guess I would say that I think you want to think strategically how and when you invest political capital. And I know that I'm maybe going off a jaunt that people are maybe not as comfortable with, but I do think there's politics within institutions. And so you want to think about how you do that. And so be politically savvy, you know what I mean, is what I would say. And if you're not someone who feels like you know how to do that, find people you feel like are, you know what I mean, I guess, some things, and learn from them. And so understand why they do things, bounce ideas off of them about like, hey, I'm thinking of this. Is this something that makes sense to you? Or do you have other sorts of ways? Or in some cases, we would take advantage of, they have a connection. It's like, then we want you to go, you know what I mean? Use your connection, you know what I mean, I guess, some things, and go advocate for this forward rather than myself go and things. And so we would have those sort of discussions and do that. And the last piece I want to add very quickly is engage students. They oftentimes, if you're wanting to do this sort of things, and I think Amy mentioned this earlier, that they're oftentimes more interested and more interested. I won't try to figure out. There's more engagement, you know what I mean, in things if the message is coming from students, since they are viewed almost like as a customer in some views and things. And so from that sort of view, if they're coming and saying like, hey, we'd really like this, to be something that's more prioritized on our campus and things, you're more likely to get buy-in in some way forward, if they are doing that. And so we did do that in things. In our specific case, the students gave us the first funding that started our initiative and things. They had a pocket of money they could do that. And then when I mentioned the fee, and when we want to do the fee, we went to the students first and we proposed it to them and say, here's why we think this can save students more money, even though it has you paying a fee. I guess some things, and they understood that, oh, we'll see greater uptake, of this. And so they went, and they were the ones that we allowed them to be the ones that led that forward, to take it to the president and provost, like, you guys lead this and we are there, with you, I guess, the things as the people that want to do this and implement this. But this is something that we feel like you guys should lead, and that's going to be the best way for us to see political success.
Excellent. Tim, you want to pick it from there?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. If you could go to who's ever, the student body that's kind of running the campus, and just, like you said, putting a plug in there, I think that would be a great thing. Let them do some of the work for you, as the way I would look at it. I might be closed-minded on this just because it's my school and I don't know how other schools operate. But since I've been there, my school has so much money, and I think they just don't know what to do with it. And like I said, I asked for funding. I said, hey, if you want this done the right way, I'm going to do it completely opposite of what other, I guess, instructors would do. And because I have to put the 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day getting it done. And I would think a lot of administrations would want to push for OER, especially I'm seeing a lot of people are from a community college. Well, what does the whole purpose of going to community college was not to pay the big fees at a university level, or to do the 2 years and get it cheap and then eventually transfer over. So I think this would be a good advertisement for the school. Like I said, my school constantly is talking about the pathway, of ZTC courses, and see if your administration is down for something like that. And I mean, that's what I would do. But like I said, maybe there's some schools where we do have a chancellor that came in and is trying to cut down costs. So, if you have that kind of situation, we've had low enrollment, due to COVID and everything. So that could be an issue. But I just think the school can find ways to get money, and that's pretty much it, I would say. But who knows? That might change in a year. I might come back and go, yeah, that was wrong advice. So
yeah, maybe you'll be next year. You'll be the panelist that's in the middle where Amy is as a OER coordinator instead of a recently published author. That's great. Thank you all for offering those. Hopefully everyone in the audience got a lot out of it. We do have a few minutes left for some follow-up questions if you'd like, and we can extend into the break session if you have some good questions as well. I'm going to use a quick opportunity based on what Tim just said about showcasing what you're doing in OER and for the stakeholders that are on your campus, and do a very, very quick plug for our LibreNet. So our LibreNet campuses, our commons you've been seeing over and over again. Every LibreNet campus that's a full member will be listed here in the campus commons area. So for instance, here's Irvine Valley College. So this is a platform for showcasing books that were written by your faculty or books that are being used by your faculty to kind of showcase, yes, our college is really active in lowering costs. Here's all the things that are being used. I can almost guarantee you no student is going to be accessing this commons, but it's a great place to showcase the hard work your faculty have been doing, the results of the grants that you've been doing, and then advocating that upwards to all the stakeholders on your campus there. So if you want to learn about more LibreNet and how you get one of these for your campus, chat with Jennifer Rogers, who is here. I think she'll probably pop in and say hi. At one of our, she's actually at the Q&A session, which is after the break today. So that's even better. So go ahead and see what she talks about in terms of the benefits of LibreNet and all that. Yep, there's Jennifer. With that, any questions that we have or thank yous? I always like to recommend people share what's been impactful for them in this kind of a panel session to give it more of an interactive feel here at the end.
Justin, can I add on to something that you just showed there?
Yeah.
So like, if you saw my college there at Orange Coast College, it would have nothing or just me, right? And I think maybe to follow up on the last question that you had asked, what a way to show your neighboring school, right? Your competition for your students to show, like, look what they're doing with OER and look at us. And that could be another piece of advice for, trying to advocate for OER. Look what they're doing and we're not doing it, right? I don't know if that will pull students away or not, but it might make administration go, right? And then they want feathers in their caps, right? So you convince them that this is a thing we need to do. Next thing you know, they look good.
True. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for our speakers that you made time for this. It's always a valuable experience to hear people just early on the OER trajectory, all the way to people who are talking with people across a whole entire state.